Today the world feels tougher than ever. From AI bots to endless social media negativity to bitter, angry politics, an uncertain economy, climate change, our generation just feels drained and overwhelmed. And with that, it's tempting to give into apathy or cynicism, or become a crazy radical, smoking weed and blocking out the world, or some online extremist troll. But on this channel, as best I can, I want to do the opposite. On one of my past videos, there was a great comment that summed it up really well. He said, "There is a middle way in all of this, and it's getting harder for people to see." That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So let's look into it. So the big question that I want to start out with is, why am I even making these videos to begin with? Like, what is even the point? And that's really what I want to focus in on. And that it goes to some of the root struggles that I think we have. Obviously, I'm going to get out of the way that, of course, this is self-serving. Trying to understand my generation, trying to understand young men, trying to understand like what our place is and everything. Obviously, that applies to me, so that's a bit self-serving. And it is, to be fair. But I think there are also like some huge problems that uniquely affect us, and moreover will apply directly to us. So like two types of things here. So there's the problems that face directly us. Those are things like anxiety and depression that have come up a lot, but also isolation, like this feeling in the modern world of like being disconnected with everything, and that everyone distrusts everyone, and that the online world is full of negativity and hate, and it just feels so draining. And existence itself sometimes just feels like you have no connections to people. You go online and everything is negative. It's all debunking and criticism and cynicism, and there's nothing positive. So it just feels like a crumbling, like a draining of energy, and then the world around you is crumbling. But then you have other big problems like climate change or the national debt or whatever the case may be, that just seem to be punted, pushed off to the future. And the future is us. The future is our generation. There's nothing we can do about that. It's either going to be the millennials or it's going to be us. So these two group of problems, I think, directly are put on our shoulders. And whether we like it or not, whether we want to put our fingers in our ears and just pretend like it doesn't exist, or focus on other things, those things will still happen. They will still come to us, and they will still apply to our generation. The other thing is, when reading about Generation Z, you just see a lot of experts throw up their hands. And what do I mean by that? So much of it is thinking about how can we make this better for kids in the future? How can we not have the same mistakes that Gen Z went through, whether that be technology being ever present, whether that be overdependence on phones for connection and not as much face-to-face interaction, whether it be not addressing some of the mental health struggles that we've had when we started having them, not later, not 10 years later or anything like that, but trying to address it at the time. A lot of these experts give me this feeling, or give the feeling off when you read them, that they're going to try to fix the future. They're trying to fix the next generation. But our generation is left kind of like, okay, well, we experienced all of those things. We went through our childhood where we had tons of video games, social media, our phones, and now we're dealing with the consequences of that. Now we're dealing with an attention span that feels like it's compressed and bothers us. And that's one of the big things that you see when I've talked to my friends, or just when you talk to Generation Z online. We all know this. This isn't like one of those things with the millennial generation, for instance, where it feels super unfair, because it's not us. We're not the ones who did it. We didn't come out of the womb saying, please give me a smartphone. These things were around us. They were in the culture. It's like the air that we breathed. And now we realize these have, in many ways, poisoned us. There have been issues that have come from these devices, or from the context that we've grown up. So now we have to deal with them. And when you read a lot of these writers, they tend to be about the next generation, fixing future problems, and not dealing with who we are now. And that's why I think there's this big gap of understanding and self-improvement around how can we actually deal with the problems that we have? How can we actually work on it? Those things have already happened to us. We've already experienced these things. So how can we actually move forward now, rather than just focusing on Gen Alpha or the babies of Gen Z? How can we, the ones who've actually gone through all these problems, move forward in a positive way? One of the big reasons experts don't try to find solutions for our generation, don't try to find methods of improvement, is because of an obvious reason. New problems demand new solutions, and that's really hard. That's the hard work. But that's the hard work that I want to try to do. That's the hard work that I want to think about, at least, and at least try to move toward that direction. Because it's way easier to just look at the next generation and just say, well, they're not going to deal with that stuff. We'll make sure that they don't have phones, or we'll make sure that they're not exposed to these issues, or we'll make sure that they have proper mental health resources. And that's the easy part. You can easily go and just and look at the future and just say, remove that, remove that. But for those of us who've had those things, the hard work is actually thinking about how we can interact with that and understand it and then improve it from there on. But passively, as a generation, when we get exposed to all of this and this mindset of, oh, well, we'll fix it for the next generation, or Gen Z is screwed, or all of these thumbnails that say Gen Z is cooked, all of those thumbnails just give us the impression of what's the point. I mean, why the fuck should we even care? Let's just check out. We'll smoke weed by ourselves. We'll stay to our little corners. We'll have our small group of friends, and that'll be it. And it just leads us to kind of cloistering down and being really isolated. And that's where we get to the next problem that I think our generation really suffers from. And that is this growing cynicism, this growing debunking culture, criticism, this everything has to be wrong, everything has to be negative. There's something wrong with this. You can look at every thumbnail is negative. And it gets to the point where sincerity and actually being genuine is cringe. And that's something I want to actively fight. That's one of the points in this video that's really important to me, is that I think we have to fight this impulse we have, this intention to just look at something where someone's genuinely trying to do the right thing or genuinely trying to come up with a solution and shit on that instantly, and to disregard it, to criticize it, to try to look how someone who was successful or seems to be trying to do the right thing is secretly doing the wrong thing, is really victimizing someone, or something implicit in what they're doing is wrong. And I think too much of the online world for our generation has become this kind of negative, degrading, downward pulling motion where it's about criticism and debunking, and sincerity is just not worth it. It's cringe, it's cliched. That's another big point that I think we have to work on. We have to find a way to make it cool again, to make cringe be okay, to make sincerity be all right, and I shouldn't even say that. It shouldn't just be all right. It should be a positive thing. We should get to the point where we're encouraging that. We're encouraging someone to sincerely get better, to sincerely go in the right direction, sincerely try to improve themselves. It shouldn't be something where we have to comment with some ironic post. That needs to be something of the past, and that's part of what I hope to be there. And I'm not going to say I'm going to be perfect like that. I'm sure that I'll be stuck in some way to put negative headlines up in order to get clicks, or to make a thumbnail that seems to appear negative. And I'm sure I'll have to do that, because that's to some degree what you have to do in this online world. But as much as I can, I want to try to pull things the opposite way, to pull things toward more sincerity and more positivity and more optimism, because our generation needs that, because we need that, because we need hope. And I don't think in this world that there is no hope. I don't think that there is nothing to be optimistic about. Yes, there are lots of problems. Yes, corporations are a big issue, and a lot of politics is full of corruption. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something to be hopeful about, that there isn't something to believe in. And that's what I think our generation needs more of. It needs more of that belief and that positivity. But it's not just Generation Z more globally that I want to talk about. Because if I just focus on that, I feel like I'd be missing some big things. And that is, young men in particular face very unique problems, specifically in the Western world. There just are a lot of things that seem to impact us uniquely, that put us at a unique disadvantage, or just by happenstance have occurred, and now we have to deal with them. And the trouble that we get into, and this is huge, the trouble we get into is that so often online, you either get into a space where there's little to no empathy for men at all, right? Unless you're like black, gay, trans, and you fly whatever perfect flag, and you cross every box, then you can have sympathy, then you can have empathy. But if you don't have those things, you can't have empathy. There's a lot of those spaces. But then you get other spaces where yes, there's empathy, yes, there's sympathy, and people will listen to you. But where's it going? Where's that empathy even going? Is it directed in a positive end, or towards this endless spiral of complaining? And then you get other ones that will give kind of a cold understanding. So the red pill community can sometimes be like that, but also just people who write books in general. They can give this kind of cold understanding, like, I get how on paper it's hard for you, or the statistics show some bad things, right? But there's not much of that emotional care. Because, and here's one of the big points, there's so few spaces where men are supported not for their external traits, not for being the best protector and provider, for instance, in a conservative community, or for instance, being the best ally, being the best male feminist, right? Again, external traits. You're like showing forth your virtue, your virtue signaling, or in the red pill community, having the biggest muscles, or in more of the comedy sphere, having the best jokes. So oftentimes, it is a very surface level feeling. This feeling of not really being able to be someplace that will accept you for yourself, but isn't going to be this downward spiral, isn't going to be a forum just about the negativity, the problems that you're facing. And yes, you get some understanding, but at the same time, it ends up being understanding pointed downward, understanding pointed toward what's bad. And how it's never going to get any better, how it'll never improve, and this is our life, and doesn't it suck to be us, right? But rather empathy pointed upward. Empathy pointed at, yes, these things do suck, and let's understand how they suck and what the problem is, and how we can understand more aspects of that problem or problems that are similar. But at the same time, let's understand that in a more positive self-improvement aspect, in a way that points us toward how we can better our lives and improve the people around us. And that's what I feel like is missing. We're missing a lot of that empathy that sees people for more of who they are, more of their whole self, while also pointing in a positive direction. Because so often, it's either a cold sort of empathy that just identifies facts, figures, and details, but doesn't really see the person for who they are. And if they do, it always has to come with what? That apology. Well, yes, of course, women have it worse. Or yes, of course, if men are struggling, then women are struggling as well. It always comes with that problem. It always comes with that preface for some reason. But past that, there isn't a real grappling with how it feels. And that can sometimes suck, right? That can make you feel totally isolated, like no one understands. And then those people who are looking for that empathy, where do they go? They go to the places that, again, point downward, that have the empathy but point it downward. Or then you get into all these communities that's just about external things. That's about having the biggest muscles, or getting the most girls, or being the most traditional conservative protector and provider, and you're not able to have that unique part. And that's what I'm hoping someone on this channel that I can provide or try to foster, not just for myself but also for other people watching too, is a place where we can understand the unique problems that don't just face Generation Z. And yes, there are a lot of those that I want to understand too, more globally, both men and women, but also some of the unique things that happen to Generation Z young men, and how that impacts us, and then what we can do about that, and how that understanding can help to improve our lives and not simply make it this negative downward spiral, while also not focusing on just external things, just being the best looking or having the most muscles or being the funniest or whatever outward characteristic might be, but try to understand the whole picture. So I'm not going to lie, a lot of this will be self-serving, because part of it is my own journey to try to understand my generation and the unique things that I face. But I hope that along the way, that a lot of people might go on this journey with me, that they might also understand the things that affect them, whether that be Generation Z more globally and the unique problems that we face as a generation, or that other generations have punted to us, or the more specific ways that a lot of young men are struggling right now, and how we can understand these things in a positive way that shows empathy while pointing that forward, and not allowing the cynicism of our generation, of the online world, to drag us down and allow the positive things we do to become cliched, trite, and cringe, but rather to overcome that. And maybe we can make a wave of a lot of these cringe things, supposedly cringe things, become cool again. That sincerity might become cool again. But either way, hopefully this won't be the last time you hear this. But thanks for looking into it, and I'll see you in the next one.